All right, welcome back to Inside Look. Today we are speaking with SFU women's soccer head coach Annie Hamel. Annie, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. So first off, do you mind just telling us kind of your journey of how you got to SFU as a coach?
Yes. So I played university in the States at the University of Maine. I was recruited when I was playing youth for the provincial program, National Training Center at the time, and so I didn't speak English, but I really loved the NCAA and the opportunity to play so much soccer and just take a chance on leaving my country and trying something new was super appealing to me just because I love the game so much. And if I'm being super honest, I didn't know what I wanted to do at university. So being given a purpose to just go play soccer was the main factor for me to go. So I went to Maine. I played my 4 years there, and then the coach asked me to return to be a graduate assistant for 1 year. So even through my time as a student athlete, I kept telling them, I'm like, I can't believe you guys get to do this for a living. Like coming out of Quebec, I had never seen that. Like coaches were, at the time, we're talking like 20 years ago as well, right? Like coaches were part-time. They were, let's say, teachers, and they were doing it a couple times a week on the weekends. We're going to games and things like that. So I didn't actually know that you could be a coach full-time until I went there. And I was like, wow, like, this is it. This is what I want to do. So then I was a GA for a year, and then I just kept on playing and coaching. Obviously, again, at the time, and it's sort of similar a little bit today, which is unfortunate. We didn't have any pro leagues to sort of aspire to. So you were really grinding, working somewhere and continuing to play and sort of following your passion in that way, just for the love of the game. And so I was doing that. So I always had my hands in it a little bit. And then so I was the GA in 05, and then 09, I went into it like full time. So my first gig was at St. Leo University in Florida. It's a small Division II. In Paradise. It's an amazing campus, just a gem of a place. And I worked with an English guy, Jed O'Connor, who was a really great mentor. And I was there for about 5 seasons, and then realized like I was ready for the next thing. And so at the time that I was thinking about becoming a head coach, SFU's job became available, and I thought, oh my goodness, I get to come home. I've been in the States for, at this point, 9 years I've been away, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I would get to come home and still maintain the NCAA, which is all I knew and what I was really passionate about. And so I applied, not really knowing what would come of it, and then got the job, which was really amazing for me because it was the perfect marriage of what I was looking for, right? Returning to Canada, and being in the NCAA. So
No, that's one of the most interesting parts about SFU as a school is the fact that you are in Canada, you get the nice West Coast climate. It's not too cold, even though you're up on the mountain. It's not too cold. It's pretty warm in the summers, and then you still get to play in the NCAA and travel and do all that.
Yeah. So after 14 years away, I made my way. 5 years in Florida. So the transition, I think that I say this all the time. I came from Florida and went to SFU in March 3rd. And it rained for about 6 weeks straight. And I was like, oh my goodness.
March is probably, February, March is the worst time up there.
It allows you to work a lot because there's nothing you can really do outside. And I was just like dove in and you get used to it. But it rained for so many days when I first moved. But
you got to be used to that by now.
That's right. I am now. I really I really, it doesn't faze me. It doesn't stop what I'm doing. It's just like, yep, that's the climate. That's how it is. But yeah, so that's kind of like, and a few gigs here and there in between, like I said, but I guess it was never straightforward in terms of, until I decided I'm doing it. I'm leaving soccer behind as a player and I'm doing it full time. In '09, that's really when I sort of decided I'm ready to leave, and the game, and I'm ready to coach full time. So yeah.
No, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's also really interesting. I don't know what I want to do at university, and you're still, and again, that's just part of that process, right? Of being able to go away, find something that you're passionate about, even though it was still related to, it wasn't necessarily academia, but it was the
Right.
chance to go and do that. You still found your passion, and it's led to a
Yeah.
pretty great career so far.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm telling you, like, me going to Maine and the realization that you could do this full time and get paid for it, it was life changing. Like, that was it right then. I was just like, this is incredible. I can't believe it. This is what I'm going to do. So
No, that's awesome.
yeah.
So now when you look at kind of recruiting thing, when you're looking at recruiting players and stuff, what would you say are some of the aspects that you kind of require from all of your players? Maybe besides goalkeepers being good with their hands. What are some things that you're like, okay, if whether they play a defensive role, an attacking role, what are some of the footballing qualities that are necessary?
When I'm recruiting,
Yeah.
what I look for.
Yeah.
Um, well, we have targets, right, for specific positions in terms of, um, attacking minded fullbacks or creative like, I think everybody would have sort of like the same standards of what you're looking for, like, as the bare minimum, if I'll say, right? Like,
Mhm.
are there tendencies to do the things that I'll ask them to do in my system, or would I have to really beat that out of them, because they play differently? Like, so I'll look a lot on the instincts, right? What are players doing without their coach yelling from the sideline, activate forward, or whatever it is, right? And just really um, the quality of the understanding of the football, right? Are you initiating a run, or are you reacting to a ball being played? Like the little things that I know are so difficult to coach, right? If they have that right away, that is just so appealing for me as a recruiter, right? The rest of the stuff, Adam, everybody will say the same thing. You want a kid that has speed. You want a kid that's athletic. Um, you want a kid that has a good attitude. Is it the kid that's yelling at the ref, or is it a kid who's encouraging the teammates? And sort of like that leadership ability, again, that comes naturally. The technical ability will always improve. If they have the smarts, if they have the soccer IQ, you'll be able to put them in any system, right? So those types
Mhm.
of things, if you're looking at and they're playing a completely different system, that doesn't matter if you see the tendencies are right?
Yeah, no,
So
I think that's really important, just because, again, when you look at tendencies and habits at the next level, at the collegiate level, it's not up to, it's up to the players to make those decisions. So if you can see that the decisions they're making without being told what to do are positive and proactive and on the front foot, it just makes it that
right,
much more appealing than someone who's following what others are just saying all the time.
exactly. And so that will always catch your eye, right? Somebody who, and somebody who loves to compete, you know like, I think that's, we talked off air a little bit about that, like the mentality, right? That winning mentality, right? Like, you're in front of goal as a striker, and it's a 2v1. Are you taking the shot, or are you passing it off? Are you passing responsibility off to the other player, right? Or are you going to get it yourself, right? That sort of, that killer instinct, right? That competitiveness, like, all those types of things for me matter, because that is not just going to change once I get them in my environment.
No, those are intrinsic values Like, though,
Correct.
that's just a mentality and something that comes from within. So, I mean, as a center midfielder who would join the play late, I'd really love a cutback, and I'll be screaming for the ball.
There you go.
But at the same time, in your team, you want a striker that's just going to go, no.
Exactly. Mine, and I'm going to finish this.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, so now, when we're looking at players that are maybe potentially thinking about, having SFU on their list, the program on their radar, what kind of academic standards are they going to be required to meet? Just, collegiately, or I guess for the academia side of it.
This is an interesting question, because this is a question that used to, or a fact about SFU that used to annoy me a little bit, how high the academic standards are and how many recruits I missed out on because it didn't meet the requirements. And now it is probably the thing I love the most, because of the quality of the people we get through the door, because it already means that they have a lot of the ingredients to be successful at the next level, right? Are they disciplined with their time? Do they care about school as much as they care about soccer? Are they gonna be good with their time management? And all of these little things that make your first year at university so difficult. The higher your sort of GPA is, the more it makes me feel confident that you'll make that transition. So it's a little something that I had to change within me, because I was so caught up in the player. And now I look at the person, and I actually love that our academic standards are quite high, because it does this sort of funneling for me. It
Yeah, it,
tells
it
me
does.
who
It
will
does
be
filter. It does
successful.
filter
That's right.
people. Yeah.
That's right. So it is quite high. I mean, from arts to kin, it's, I would say you have to be mid 80s to get in to pretty much arts, like any of those types of programs, like education, communications. And then when you're getting into engineering and kin and all those, you're in the 90s for sure. For sure. It's very competitive.
No, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the biggest schools in BC, so you have
Mhm.
tons of people applying. That's only going to drive the standard up.
That's right.
And do you guys have any, within your team, do you have any like specific goal that you try and set for all the play, like as a collective to meet?
Yeah, we do. I have very strict standards, because I just know how easy it is to get distracted. That age group, right? 18 to 22, let's say. I've been that person. I have been in their shoes, and as much as they think they don't want it, I know the student athletes like structure, because they've always had it. And if you make the mistake to say, well, they're 18 now, they should just be responsible for what they do, you're going to run into problems and realize that some of the things are not done the way that they should be done, right? And maybe their grades will suffer. And if that happens, and there's consequences with the NCAA in terms of what does that mean if you fall below 2.0, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, we structure them like it's pretty rigid, I'll say. We have study hours for everybody that's below at 3.0. We have study hours on the bus. We have study hours on every road trip, at the hotels, everywhere we go. Like, it's planned into the itinerary. We pair roommates based on, who they're comfortable study. Like, if somebody's in kin, we're not really exactly going to put them with somebody who maybe is not, because the demands might be different. So we'll put people that will do well together in terms of their study time. And if I want to be in my room quiet and study, then hopefully my roommate will want to do the same thing, because they're in the same program as us. So there's a lot of thought process through how we manage that part of it, because they do need help, especially for us in the NCAA. Adam, you know how it is. It's not like I leave home and go play, down the street, play a game and come home or come back to my dorm. I mean, we leave on a Wednesday and we'll come back on a Saturday night. You've missed 2 days of school. If it's not built into the itinerary, if it's not built into the program culture to really, really give the care that the academics at SFU require, they're not going to do it. It's like vacation.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously with SFU having to travel for every single away game, you're away way more, depending on when your classes are. If your classes are just structured at the end of the week, again, you're sitting there and you're sitting at a point where you're missing most of your classes now. It might be only 2 days, but you might miss 2 of your 4 classes every week.
That's right.
And when you mentioned structure, and I think that's really, really, really important, because again, we're talking about, oh, they're 18, they should just figure it out. Well, they haven't had to all the way up through high school yet. So
Exactly.
you'd hope that they had some structure at home and they had structure at high school. So all of a sudden they're for the first time really having to make these decisions by themselves.
On their own.
Are they consciously making the decision to study, or is it, my homework's not due for a month, rather
It's
than due
Snapchat,
weekly?
Adam. It's Snapchat. Snapchat and Netflix.
So I think and again, you mentioned, how rigid is the program culture. How important have you found it for freshmen to be able to find their place within that structure? Potentially, do they struggle typically, or do you find that they're able to find it pretty quickly?
I think they find it pretty quickly because we give it a lot of care, first of all, so we talk about it often. But SFU does such a wonderful job with student athletes, right? With the early enrollment in classes, making sure it does fit a traveling schedule when you're in season, with the learning coaches, with the study hall sort of like area, with the tutors that they have access to, with our academic advisor who is there for them constantly, with, myself, Anna, Jenna. We're always available. They know the door's open, especially for academics. We're always willing to help or bounce ideas or give them tips, or, so we do so many things so that they see how important it is. And we speak about it often. If you say it once and then never pay attention to it again, like, we follow up weekly with them. You know what I mean? Because I just know how easy it is to fall behind when you're in season. This is the problem for us, and this is why I think I give it so much energy and time, is because unlike other sports, soccer, football, volleyball, they come in as freshmen in season, being first-time students with, no sort of adaptation period. Our season doesn't start in October or November. It starts before school starts. Our opening weekend is always a week before school. And so here you are in preseason for 2 weeks, and all you get to care about is soccer, and you're with your new friends, and it's so amazing, and you're living this dream life. And all of a sudden school starts and it's like, oh, I don't really want to do that, and it's so easy to fall behind. Like, every single year we're on the trip to California and they miss 2 of the 3 days of the first week of school. You know what I mean? And so if we don't tell them before it starts, email the teacher, get the stuff right away, because we'll be away, and they have the letter they take to the teachers, which dates they're gonna miss, and then very early on we make a plan, and like sometimes they have to, move a midterm or take it early or take it on the road, but we know from the very beginning, and we can sort of make a plan and help them be successful. But we put the care to it like straight away, because we come in season.
Yeah, you
That's
have to.
That's
And
right.
again, that makes that transition so much more difficult for those freshmen coming in, especially with something that's as high, and not to mention that it's not as if it's the spring season where, they're like, as much as you want to win those games and you want to improve, there's nothing on the line. Whereas now there's
That's right.
something on the line. You're now playing competitive games.
That's right.
Do you think, or at least do you hope that, with everything going on with COVID and having to transition to a more, to a better online platform, are you kind of hopeful that that might make traveling easier for you, for your players? Do you think that's something that the school should look to try and maintain at least somewhat for, especially for athletes?
I will say before COVID, I might have said yes, I do like the online option. I think now, because every class and everything is online, the workload, I think there's got to be a balance somewhere. And I think online classes, I don't want to say were easier before COVID, but maybe they were managed differently. I think now, I've never seen my student athletes work this hard. They couldn't have traveled the way that the requirements were with the online classes this semester. They just couldn't have. So I think my perception of that has changed quite a bit. I also don't think it's suitable for every single person. You have to be very disciplined. And again, for freshmen, it might be different. Like, we have freshmen that have no problems with online and they prefer it. But I also think that for other student athletes with different abilities or different interests, it's better to be in class. Everybody learns differently, right? So, but I do think that this, if you ask me, like, everybody online, did it make it easier? Would we have been able to travel? Absolutely not. I've never seen them this stressed out and with this much to do. So it's a tough question to answer. I think I like the balance of both, because they love being in classes together. I think that was such a sad thing for the freshmen not to experience that sort of, like, being in a classroom with your teammates and the fun of it, and walking to class and doing your homework together and doing group projects and all that stuff. And also with other student athletes that were freshmen, and it sort of built that sense of community. And then you go to each other's games, and it's just kind of snowballs. So if that was a possibility, I probably would never want my squad to go fully online.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why online got a little too out of hand this time was because when you are in class, most of your work is done through tutorials. And so
Right.
that's all your in-person stuff. That's all where all your weekly stuff gets done. Well, now it's all online. So now you have weekly stuff. You now have to do weekly stuff on top of assignments, on top of midterms. But I think like what you mentioned, where there's kind of an in the middle, I think there would be a good blend where I don't really see why professors can't record their lectures and post those online.
Right.
Like, I think
Yeah.
that's just something simple where even if the player's missing it, they're able to do it there. Or if,
Yeah.
if they have midterms where it's all multiple choice, well, why
Hmm.
can't they take that on the road?
Hmm.
Why is that something that's not able to happen, where they leave it like, okay, what's your schedule like? I'll make it available from this time to this time. I
Yeah.
think I'm at least hopeful that having to go to such a large online platform will at least provide more, I don't know, maybe more a smoother process for
I
athletes when they
think,
travel. But
I
again, you
think,
can't go all online.
yeah, I think one of the words maybe you're looking for is a little bit more flexibility from the professors, because you're right. We have had, like, we do leave, for multiple days at a time. And sometimes you'll run into some professor who does not want to bend and not be lenient. And then it's like, well, if you're not there for the midterm, then your final will count for 70%. And
Yeah.
that's just a stress that the student athletes don't need to live through or live with. Like, they're representing the school. We're all working for the same place. I think there should be, and Dr. Rubin does such a good job with that and managing that. Um, but if you could have a little bit more, flexibility, and we have certainly prompt exams on the road, because we have teachers that are just, like, so great. But you're right, the ability to just record the lecture, then they could watch it, because a lot of the times on the road it's dead time, right? So they could
Yeah.
actually attend the course if it was, being recorded, or right after it's being recorded,
Or
if
if
it's
they're
a
like, you know what, I got a game today, I'm going to download it and then I'm watching on the bus tomorrow.
That's
something like
right.
that, like a more
Totally.
flexibility and more just I need to promote a little bit more efficient learning on the road at
We
least.
we
I
should
think
send our ideas to our school.
and
See if
so
they listed.
yeah. So we talked about it a little bit, but how, like, do you find that there's a really large difference between their in-season schedule compared to their off-season, besides obviously the weight of what they're doing in season?
Yeah, definitely. I think season is difficult because it's literally 6 days a week, right? One day off on a Sunday typically, and and we are, so lucky that we get a day off in between games, and but it does make it uh, very busy, right? Because you have sort of like that extra day in between. We leave on the Wednesday to play on the Thursday. Friday you're traveling to your next destination. Saturday you play, and then you come home, and then Sunday you're off, and then Monday comes around and there goes another week that starts the exact same way. So it is quite busy from preseason to whenever you lose in the NCAA tournament, which can go all the way to the end of first weekend of December is always the Final Four. So depending how well you do, right, it can be quite extensive of a season. And then the spring is more a time where you focus on all the little details or things that you didn't have the chance to focus on in season because it just goes so quickly, and you're always preparing for the next game, or you're in recovery, right? Um, so, the spring is 2 days mandatory off. So the weekend, Saturday, Sunday off, you train Monday to Friday, sometimes early morning, just to make sure that the girls that couldn't take certain courses, because of our training time or the travel, they now have sort of like green light to take anything that they need to take, to make sure that they progress through their degree. So we have to be obviously very lenient with that, and we try to manage the number of girls that miss training. So we'll go in the morning, right, and then come in early, get it done, and then you're free for the rest of the day to do whatever else you need to do, right, in terms of your academics. And it really is just a training mindset. We don't play very much in the spring. First of all, we're only allowed 5 matches. On a good year, we'll play maybe 3, depending on injuries. I mean, I don't ever ask my seniors to stay. I know some programs do that. Having them train through the spring. It's not something we do. So we lose players obviously right after the fall. And so your number goes down. And with all the rules that we have, it's not like we can invite people to make up the numbers or things like that. And I would never actually, it's not something I would believe in. I think you're in high school, go be in high school, and we'll see you when you get here. But so, sometimes you have low numbers, and so a few injuries and you can't play. I've had to cancel games that we had scheduled, and that never makes me feel very good, because I know that, obviously all the local schools that we play, they have the freedom to play unlimited amount of games, and they try to pack their calendar, which is great. And so if we pull out of a game, that kind of like puts them off track in their planning. So I try not to do that, just because I know how easily sort of like we lose players through little nagging injuries right through the spring, because we are training 5 days a week, and it can be, taxing on the body in a different way.
No, yeah, for sure. And again, if you're taking more difficult classes, you're probably spending more time studying rather than maybe,
Totally.
doing the things you need to for your body. And speaking of that, it's kind of scheduling your classes a little bit tougher in the spring. Is that something that you kind of openly express to your freshmen, of saying, hey, fall is going to be intense. Don't, like, these are courses, stay away from these. Like, do not take these, wait. Because I remember going through this and being like, oh, I'm going to take these classes in the fall. I got hammered.
Yeah, no, the like I said, the academic advisors, they know, right? So a kid in science, or in coming in with chemistry, philosophy, which is an awful course to take when you've never done it, with, paired with physics and math, and you think that's your first semester at uni, like you're going to be told absolutely no chance. You know what I mean? So we do try to balance their schedule. We will take maybe more heavily electives in the fall in season, and try to be very smart about the structure of the year. And we do really look at it over a year in terms of, okay, these are the 8 courses you're going to take. We'll take maybe these 4 here and see if these are available in the spring. And that's why we give them green light in the spring. It's like, take all the ones that you couldn't in the fall, or that you were told maybe don't take that. It's quite heavy during a season with all the traveling we do. And so that's why they have like complete green light to take them in the spring or over summer if they want to get ahead, right?
No, yeah, for sure. And I mean, you already touched on a lot of the things that you're talking about, as far as recruiting a well-rounded person. You talked about how discipline is important, time management. And, looking at scheduling classes like that, I think that also helps with kind of like a better work-life balance for the athletes. If you look at work as the student and athlete part, and then the rest of life, where they're seeing their family, seeing their friends. I mean, if you have more electives in the fall, you're not so stressed out. You're not just spending all your time studying away from the field and away from the classroom.
Mm-hmm. And then in the spring, when it's harder, well, you actually have more time because you have your weekend free, so you can see your friends and family. So it does all balance itself out in the end. But we do advise, and you know what? The funny, like you mentioned, right? Like the student athletes tell each other, they're like, "You're not taking that." Like, I've taken this course with this course. They'll tell each other what to sort of like take and how to manage it. People are from the same program, like looking at a freshman, they're like, right, we know that you need to be successful to keep on playing, so here's what you should take. They help each other out as well. So that's, yeah.
When's the last day to add drop classes?
Yeah, exactly.
Add this elective.
That's right.
It's a GPA booster.
That's right. We actually
now,
have the captains, they look over all the schedule, because they're the ones that then send us, me and Anna, all their schedule to see when the gaps are for the scheduling their training, because they know if it doesn't, you guys, the boys, they'll train 3:30 to 5:30. That's been consistent for years. We train 1:30 to 3:30, and they want to keep that. They know that if we can't keep that, we go morning. And the seniors don't want to go morning. So they're like, freshmen, you have the luxury and the flexibility to take any course. Do not schedule at that time. And they approve it before we get it sent to us to make sure that they get the afternoon training. They're very funny. They have their own system.
That's awesome. I mean, that just breeds the culture, though, from the program, right? If you have your captains and your seniors taking that initiative upon themselves, it just creates it creates a platform and a foundation for the future classes to build from.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, going back to recruiting a little bit now, what do you see what are the main advantages that you find recruiting from a player, like a transfer player? So whether they're from another NCAA program, JUCO, whatever.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting question. I think I'm very picky with transfer students. They have to come from a school that really would have cared. Like, it's very hard for us to get a JUCO through the door because SFU is strict and a lot of the credits won't transfer. So the JUCO student might go, well, I'm not starting all of these over. I'm going to go look here then, right? So again, I think SFU sort of like filters quite a bit through our requirements, which transfer students we can get through the door. But of course, anybody with playing experience at uni, whether a JUCO or even a CEGEP kid in Quebec, right? Or anything where you've had an extra year to develop, or you're older, you're more mature, I mean, there's just so many benefits to getting a transfer through the door, right? And especially for me, like I've had a lot of success if they're a transfer that I've recruited. So I know them, I know their family, I know their playing environment, there's a relationship there, and they decided to try something else and it didn't work out and they want to come back to us. Like the door's always open. Like you are 1000% allowed to follow your heart or your dream and go. Like Jenna Baxter is the greatest transfer we've ever had, right? And it's somebody I knew very well that I recruited heavily, and she chose to go to Oregon State, and it just wasn't the right fit. But she didn't know that, right? And it just wasn't for her. And then she returned to us, and it's like, look at the career she's had at SFU, right? Like incredible achievements, and maybe that year did help her to realize how badly she wanted to be playing for us and how much she cared about being there, and the growth that she did over there, and look at what happened as a result of it, right? So of course transfers offer a lot. They have to be the right transfer.
No, yeah, for sure. I mean, I know that's one thing that we consistently talk about with some players who are like, yeah, you know what, I think I'm going to go to a JUCO school to pick up my grades. And it's like, yeah, make sure the courses you're taking are really transferable courses. Don't take basket weaving, because it's not going to
Exactly.
transfer and it's going to disqualify you from other institutions. Because, even looking at a lot of the NCAA schools down south, the big schools are really high. They have high academic standards.
Totally.
And
I
it's
think
it's just one of those things that you need to make sure that you're taking the right courses, that you're still progressing towards that degree.
I think to your point, I think that's something that's missing from the understanding of Canadians and the recruiting process with the States. I think the knowledge of where you go to the States, you'll get a full ride is something that somehow hasn't died down. People still believe that to be the case and are forgetting how much soccer has grown in the last 20 years. So they don't need to come knock on your door to get that quality of a player. They have that player in their own state, paying in-state tuition, right? Where they don't necessarily need you as a player. So now what's going to be the difference maker between you and them? Your grades, right? So do you have good enough grades that if they get you through the door, they know that they can get you admissions money? So the money doesn't just come out of their budget, their scholarship dollars, right? And it's like being a good player nowadays is secondary to being a good student, because being a good student makes you so appealing, whether you stay here at home or whether you try to follow a dream to go to the States. And if you're just good at soccer, you better be very, very, very good to get that type of money from a program. And I think that's something that is missed in terms of the understanding of how easy or difficult it is to get to the States, how important the academics are.
Oh, without a doubt. And I mean, I think it's just also the understanding of, well, not everyone gets a scholarship.
That's right.
Like each program divvies it up differently, but you only have a set number of scholarships, and that's set across the board to try and create some sort of parity. Now, schools have different academic requirements, and that's like what you talk about, where if you can get a really good GPA combined with a very good SAT score, I mean, that's, you don't need the athletic money, sorry. Like
That's
it's all
right.
academic, and a lot of schools down there, they will, as long as you maintain a GPA, they'll continue giving that to you all of your
Exactly.
time there. So it's like, it's this second side of it that it like you said, it is a massive filter. GPA is a
Oh, yes.
massive filter.
Yes.
And you mentioned going down to the States and stuff, like, and talking about how to be seen. and we spoke a little bit about this off camera, but what are kind of your do's and don'ts for highlight tapes? What are like the most important things that you can talk about? And then the one thing that you're like, absolutely not, do not send me this.
Okay. I don't need to see you dribble in your backyard. So juggling, those types of skills, it's like you could be the world's greatest juggler and that doesn't make you able to play soccer. So there's a little bit of that is not necessary to me. I mean, it's great that people could do it. It's just I will fast forward through that. Like it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't indicate very much, right? I think the how high the camera is in terms of the angle, because sometimes, especially in a time like this where all we're doing is recruiting over video, like for me, a lot of who you are as a player is your time off the ball. And if the camera's only on you, you know what I mean? Like if it's higher up, then I can kind of see how you move, when you start to move, when you start to engage with the play, those types of things, right? So a good camera angle is obviously very important.
Yeah, I think that whole
the
list.
music to me is a no. The music, like I watch them all on mute. Yeah.
No,
It's
I
just,
think what you talked about, where like the camera angle and being able to see more of the play, it's a more holistic view of you as a player, because
yeah.
obviously in a highlight tape, for sure it's all your best moments and everything, right? You're gonna see those, but again, does that best moment include really good movement?
One of the things that I dislike the most on a recruiting video is seeing the action and then having you show me the same action in slow motion. Like I saw it. That's my job, to see it. I saw what happened. I don't need it now to be going in slow motion to highlight the exact same moment you made the pass, right? So that is a big one for me, where I just lose interest after the first slow-mo. I'm like, you're gonna do this the whole time for me? I really don't need that aspect of the video to be in it. Do you know what I mean?
No, yeah, 100%.
So that's one that the slow-mo version of the event. Yeah, I don't like seeing that.
Yeah.
Uh,
And kind of looking at like what we'll scrap this last year because this year's been a wash, but um if you look at like in a normal given year, what would be kind of the events and showcases that you would typically like to go watch players at?
well, the biggest tournament in Canada, right, is the Umbro Showcase. So that's always one that we're at. The Kamloops Showcase, I just love this initiative from BC Soccer. Started a few years ago, and you get a few good teams from Alberta coming in every year. You get all the right age groups from the BCSBL in our community, all in one event. That's awesome, right, to see that. So that one has been really great. It makes for a busy 2 weeks though, because they're back to back always. It's like the Umbro, and then you go to the Kamloops Showcase, which makes May quite busy. Then I guess the rest of the time is spent where it's like this saying, like, figure out which pond you want to fish in, right? Like, where do you want to spend your time? Where do you have a good connection? Where have you recruited before? We've traveled all around. We've recruited a little bit everywhere, and you sort of like have events here and there, that you just fly to or go to. And then in the summer, it's a little bit more of camps and things like that. So it's a little bit like less busy. And then in the middle of my season, it's always a bit challenging to do all the recruiting. But I'm very lucky because my day off is always Sunday. and Sunday's always a BCSPL. So for local recruitment, the fall is where I will do most of that, the local recruitment in the fall on that Sunday. So yeah, a few showcases here and there, like we talked about, some in Ontario, some environments I go into in Ottawa, in the Toronto area, a couple of things in Quebec, and then local stuff, which we have a great league. And as most of our recruiting gets done within our own community, right? Because that's um, that's where we have access to players. I like to see them regularly, you know what I mean? And if we find what we're looking for in our own community, then that's my first choice. There's really no need to expand and branch out. Like, you can drive yourself crazy, because think about the volume of players across the country. If you start to want to go everywhere, you're gonna go nowhere.
No, yeah, for sure. And I mean, you spoke about the growth of the game over the last 20 years, and look at how many more players are playing and how many more are playing at the top level as well. It just increases so greatly. And you kind of spoke about, how BCSPL and they pick the right age groups for those showcases. What would be the age that you would say, like, this is kind of when I start to look at my next class? Like, I start the filtering process. This is where I'm going to get my base group that I'm going to look at, and then we're going to start to filter from there. When would you say that you start that?
About grade 10. So if you're in grade 10, we start to grade 10, we start to build sort of like the names on the board, right? The funnel. Mm-hmm. And the more we watch you and track, right? We track. The more we sort of like narrow and filter through that sort of funnel.
Yeah.
But really in grade 12, like I would never, Adam, spend even a minute recruiting earlier than that. Kids change so much. I think you can get very crazy. I mean, you've seen it in the States, like people are receiving commitments from, grade 7. It's like, oh my goodness, like why? And you see the number of decommitments increasing every year. And kids will say it, like, I committed there when I was 12. What did I know? Do you know what I mean? That was the first place that recruited me, and I thought it was the greatest place on earth. And then they sort of like grow up, and it's like, I don't want to go there anymore. Like, you see it all the time, especially in basketball and football in the NCAA, right? And it's a result of committing way too early. But I think there's that sort of race. I think some coaches feel like it's a race to get to a top player earlier than everybody else and getting the commitment earlier than everybody else. And I don't believe in that. I believe in recruiting them when they're older, seeing what they can do at that age, imagining them in my system at that point in time, right? Because you have a clear 4-year cycle, and 2 years out, you kind of know who's graduating, who's redshirting, what's happened, what do you need, how has the conference evolved in that time? Like, you've spoke about it. The conference in 2013 or 12, when you got to SFU to when you left, or wherever those years were not the same, right? So everything changes constantly. And I couldn't imagine committing a player that little, because I would feel like they weren't coming to me for the right reasons, for the reasons that I would want them to come to me, right? And so I think every coach has their philosophy. That's certainly not mine, to beat everybody to the punch. I recruit only the players that I need. I recruit players that are amazing people, because if you care about your team culture, which any success that you'll ever have in college sport for females, because there is nothing beyond. This is their pro years, right? For soccer. Maybe different sports have leagues, but we don't. And so that is what they'll give their heart and soul to. Like, I care a lot about who comes through the door. I care that they'll be respectful to the program culture, because that's what will dictate if you're successful or not, right? Do you have a strong foundation? are they going to fit that foundation? And that's really the number one indicator. And I don't think that you really get that clear of a picture about a person until they are a little bit older. So that's why I don't recruit any earlier than that. And I also, in the recruiting process, I want them to go other places. I want them to go everywhere and anywhere. And I want them to measure and compare and have their checklist of the top 5 things that they want for their university career. And I want them to measure it all and think about it and circle back and say, you know what? I want to go to SFU. That's it. I've seen them all, and that's the one I want to go to. And that to me is like a far bigger win than anything else, because I didn't pressure the kid. I didn't offer more money. I didn't beat anybody to the punch. And maybe that's not a very cutthroat way to recruit, but for me, for female athletes who only have their university career to really like do things with and win, and for me, that's the right way to do it. And
Yeah,
so
and I think like kind of what you touched on, where it's like the race to sign. I think there's a secondary race with players where they're like, oh my God, I got an offer, I got to take this, it's going to be gone, kind of thing.
yeah,
So they're taking the first thing that they see. And when you
yeah.
talked about make your list, do a checklist, all that stuff, like that's part of the relationship building process. Like you need to
Mm-hmm.
understand, there's no sense in going, oh yeah, this school offered me a scholarship, I'm going to take it, if they don't
Mm-hmm.
have the program you want to go into.
Exactly.
And so there's this flip side of the relationship that players need to build with coaches as well. It's one thing, it's 100%, it's not mutually exclusive. Like you definitely need to build relationships as a coach to make the players know that you're interested in them, but at the same
Mm-hmm.
time the players also have to let you know why they're interested in coming to your program.
Totally.
There is that give and take. And especially for local players, like how important do you think it is for local players to watch a university play, whether in person or video?
I think it's extremely important. I think they need to educate themselves. I think they need to come watch the coach, their behavior on the sideline. Is that going to fit with you? Are they very vocal? Are they sitting down? What is their behavior? And don't tell them you're coming either, because you know what I mean? Like, go see what the real thing is. You know what I mean? I invite every recruit. This is the times that we train at. Come watch a training session. Please come watch a training session. I try to go into their environment so they get to see how I coach, because what's the point of me recruiting a person and convincing them to come to my school, and then they come and it's not at all what I said or what they expected, and then they transfer out or they're unhappy, and it just doesn't work. Like, I want it to work both ways. I'm not in a business of presenting myself one way and then being something different once I got you. I
Mm-hmm.
got your signature on the piece of paper. What's important as a coach, right? Like, what is the most important thing for me as a coach? 3 things are the most important things for me as a coach. 1, the student athlete experience, right? 2, my retention rate on my program. When they come and they commit, do they stay, right? And 3, if they don't stay, do they at least stay in school and graduate? So the graduation rate. And that's what I hope I'm measured on all of the time. Not my wins, not my losses. They're not going to remember that. Nobody graduates school memorizing the record over 4 or 5 years, right? Did they have a good student athlete experience? Did they still love the game, right? Did they stay in the environment and were happy from day one, and the relationships grew and they loved it even more on their last day than they did on day one, right? And if it didn't, for whatever reason, did they at least walk out with their degree, right? Was SFU a good enough place for them to want to stay at and graduate from, right? And that is it. That is the whole purpose of what I do. That's what was given to me as a student athlete, right? When I went to Maine and I took a chance on those guys, and I went to other places and I thought, oh my goodness, I want Maine. That's where I felt it. I've seen them all and I want Maine. That's what I want. And I gave it everything I had for 4 years and stayed an extra year, and
Mhm.
I want to do the same things for the student athletes that do take a chance on us and do come to SFU. And SFU is different. It looks the way that it looks. You know what I mean? Like it has the rep that it has, and it's in the NCAA, and is a lot of traveling, and it's not for everybody, and it is difficult. And I'm not gonna pretend that it's not. I'm gonna tell you straight up, it's difficult to be a student athlete at SFU. But guess what? Oh my goodness, is the reward worth it? You know what I mean? And you're just gonna love the journey of it, and love when you graduate. Like, you'll look back and thought, oh my God, look at all the skills I've learned and the person I've become, and I did it in the pursuit of my dream of playing soccer. How amazing is that?
No,
Right? And
without a doubt.
that's it for me. So the race to it, and the more money, and the glitter of it, and no, you come to SFU, we are what I call blue collar. You're coming here to work. I mean, it can be gray. We don't have the best facilities. Like, of course, we're getting a new stadium, whatever, but the bog is the bog, right? Like,
Yeah.
where you're throwing weights around. Does it matter that your name's on the weight? Like all the glitter, the stuff that for me doesn't matter. And if it matters to you, we're not it. We're not the right fit. And I'm not going to lie about that to anybody. You're blue collar. You want to put your head down and do work. We're it. You know what I mean? Because we have to fight for every inch of anything that we get in the NCAA, and the GNAC is extremely competitive. And if you don't have that mindset, it's just not going to work. And I don't want that, because I want once you're through the door, I want to keep you. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Like, that's important to me. So that's sort of my philosophy on it. And I don't think you get there with kids that are too young. That's why we start the funnel in grade 10, and then grade 11, we get more serious with certain, and we'll commit them, and then they get excited through their grade 12 to come through the door, right?
No, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that was very long-winded, but I'm very passionate about the recruiting process, because it is the foundation of your success, and I think it's important to get the kids through the door and make sure that they have such a wonderful experience, because if everybody would just understand that for women, that's all they get. There is no going to play in the MLS and the combines and the whatever's below the MLS. I forget, but what is it called again?
There's USL, and then now
the
obviously the
USL.
CPL.
Like we there's none of that. This is it. So get the kids that you're going to use, that are going to have a good experience, and give them a good experience.
No, for sure. And just lastly, any further advice for any of the young women out there looking to get recruited?
Go where you're wanted, not where you're pressured. Like the point that you made earlier, about take the scholarship or it will be gone. That to me is so damaging, the pressure of that. I just don't think there's really a need for that, and
Oh, for
again,
sure.
like, be confident in the product that you have to offer, and they'll come back. They'll choose you. Do you know what I mean? So go where you're very wanted, where you'll have the freedom to explore, and if you trust your gut and go where you're wanted. I think that's an important one, because you know what it's like, right? You're not going to change a coach's mind about you. If they're iffy about getting you, and they're kind of getting you because you'll be a good number, but they're not very sure, chances are that once you're in the environment, like if your thought process is, well, I'll earn it, like they'll out recruit you every single time. So you'll never get the chance to really earn it. Those stories are very rare, right?
No, yeah,
So,
definitely.
yeah. I don't know if that makes sense. It makes sense to me, but
No,
yeah.
awesome. Well, Annie, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
No problem.